Well, good morning. I am a practitioner of religious science as a, I'm going to start off with the difficulties here right away. Sorry, I have to clear my throat, guys. At the Oasis Teaching Chapter, my minister is Reverend Sandy Scott, and I didn't bring my clipboard today. The last two times I've brought it, I've left it behind. Today I left it behind at home. So I'm not able to offer you the opportunity to sign up on our mailing list, but if you are interested in that, feel free to see me after the service, and we'll talk about it then. So the title of my talk today is a little bit of a riff on your affirmation that we just said, which is the consciousness I am forms my universe. Now, I watched Reverend Bram's talk, and he actually kind of went off in the direction of maybe the way it's supposed to be read in your affirmation today. What is the I am consciousness? And I want to talk a little bit more about the theme of the song we just heard. These guys always do the perfect thing, no matter what it is, that fits with my talk, which is the I was consciousness. How we got to where I am today, and how that does affect and form my and our universe. I only have my universe and you only have yours. We are one, we understand all of that, but in reality, I only have my reality. It's all I'm able to interpret and understand and to see, and it's not identical to yours, and yours isn't identical to mine. So I want to use the Science of Mind teaching symbol as well, which we have up on the board up here. Not like a teacher, right, on the board. It's the old English teacher in me is coming out. Where was she? Anyway, this is our Science of Mind teaching symbol, and I want to kind of break down the title of my talk, which again is The Consciousness I Am Forms My Universe. And this is taking the words from your theme for the month. And I want to look a little bit at how we have this universe and forms, which Doug's reading also talked about, all forms are from God, and how the I part fits in there, where I'm creating my own outcome. I'm creating my universe, and the forms that I have brought into being through my thought process is what my universe becomes. That's my only reality. So we understand how the symbol works. We start out open at the top, and then there's this part in the middle, you know, where the V is and those borders are on either side of the V. Anybody remember what that's all about? That's that sort of unformed substance and the soul and that kind of mushiness where things kind of come into form. Well, that is our consciousness. And it's comprised, as I would submit to you, of a conscious level and a subconscious or unconscious, whichever way you want to call it, level. You can learn all these things in the classes with Reverend Bonnie or with me at the classes that I teach. But I don't have time to go into all of these things today and all these definitions, but I do want to kind of break it apart a little bit so that when I get into what I'm going to talk about, we'll have that foundation put in place. So this consciousness that's in the middle of the V is what we've brought into our I am from who I was. And that's the theme in Miranda's song. You know, the girls that kicked my ass since when I was 17, and the boys that taught me how to dance, and all of the things that come in there are a part of what we've got there in our consciousness. We've also brought in a few things that we've inherited from what we call race thought, or the ideas or the conventional wisdoms that circulate amongst human beings as to how it works that may not be quite right, but they're there for us nonetheless, and we have to kind of figure out how to deal with them. And the form is what ends up at the end of the V in our teaching symbol, where we start out with the idea or the thought up above. The V comes down through the consciousness and through that unformed substance aspect, and comes out the other end as a form, as a thing, as an object, as an experience, as an event, as something that seems to have tangibility to it at that moment. So as Reverend Rainbow teaches us, right, thoughts are things, right? So thoughts become things. And what I really want to focus on today is how these things are formed through that consciousness, that the consciousness I am is what forms my universe. It's what creates the forms of my universe. It's what creates for me the outcome that I choose to judge one way or the other as my life. This is my life. So there's this higher esoteric level where we're talking about the I am consciousness, and we know from what Doug was just reading to us that I am is God. I am that I am is God. And that we are a part of God. We understand that on certain levels through the teachings of Science of Mind. But what I want to talk about today is this mushy stuff in the middle that is our consciousness and our subconsciousness. And I want to give it another word that's more at the practical level of how we work with these things in our teachings to get to the bottom of it all. I want to call that our shadow. Is there anyone here that hasn't heard or been exposed to the idea of shadow work? Okay, and I'm not necessarily going to have to go into that aspect of it. One of the books that I brought with me today is Debbie Ford's book on the secret of the shadow, how owning your whole story is what this book is about. Her first book was The Dark Side of the Light Chasers, which became very popular in the initial printings of it. And this is a later book that she has created. But the shadow is our story, and our consciousness is our story. It is the song that Miranda sang. It is who I was is who I am today. The question, I think, is brought about by the song that she sang and what Bonnie had said about being grateful for all these things is, are we grateful for it? Have we learned to embrace that whole story? Have we learned to be thankful about what we think about? Or are we still stuck in our story, resisting, judging, justifying, and otherwise limited by it because we're encapsulated in it and we can't punch our way back out through it, or we can't find our way out of it? So I want to read you what Debbie Ford has to say about the idea of our story and resisting the changing of it that we can talk about a little bit today. So first of all, how many of you in here have maybe spent, just a few hundred or maybe 1,000 hours in your lives, depending on how old we all are, trying to change other people in your life? Or maybe some of the events of your past, or some quality about yourself that you think you don't like or that you shouldn't have or that's wrong. Whether it's your fear, your selfishness, or your bank account. Am I the only one in here? Okay, so we're all in the right room today then. That's good. That's good. So what we've done is, I told at the beginning, Randy and Marilyn were practicing some stuff, and I made a comment to Randy about the song he was singing, and he said, I didn't really like the rhythm of that song initially, the way it was put out, which is kind of like a waltz, and so I wanted to change the beat behind it. And I said, well, that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today, because her comment to him was to make it what it's not. Or isn't that what you said? And I said, that's what we're going to talk about today, is how much time we spent in our lives trying to make it what it's not, or trying to make what is not is, and not accepting what is. So here's what Debbie Ford has to say, is our resistance is triggered whenever we make ourselves, others, or the world, universe, wrong. The eternal belief that sets up our resistance says, it shouldn't be like this. Everyone, and I mean everyone, has this belief. Most of us believe that if we resist the unwanted conditions of our lives enough, or hard enough, or long enough, they'll go away. I've been guilty of that one. Still am, One thing I can promise you with absolute certainty is that resisting what is will never make it go away. It might drive you deeper into denial and deeper into your story, but it won't change what happened to you when you were there. It won't help you lose 20 pounds, and it sure won't make you like your ex-husband. So that's a little bit about what Debbie Ford has to say about resistance to what is and to our story. And I've talked in this past before about the bumper stickers and the 12-step stuff and everything. Have you all ever heard the acronym for the word denial? For the word denial in the program? Well, it's don't even notice I'm lying. It's because we have this tendency to deny things that aren't pretty to us, or that we don't want them to be the way they are, or we didn't like the beat of the song, or whatever it may be. We put another picture on it, or another persona on ourselves, or another image that we think we are going to like better, other than what it is. and we stay in that denial. And I'm not denying that denial has its place. You know, there is a benefit to denial in terms of preserving us sometimes from our jumping into something that we're not quite ready for, or changing something that we're not quite ready to have changed. This readiness and willingness are all kind of like mixed up together in that what I'm ready to let go of in my subconscious or uncover or reveal in my subconscious has to sometimes have a little denial layered over it first before I've got enough spiritual depth, enough strength, and enough courage to step into what it is that I'm identifying. You know, we talked last month, I talked to you about the revealing is healing, and that you reveal, then you feel, but then you have to deal. So I'm talking a little bit more today about deal, and this is not, you know, to go into last month necessarily, but just to build on that. So the denial is don't even notice I'm lying. And we deny it to ourselves and we deny it to others, this part of our story or the things that happen or what's building up in our consciousness. Because you know what Dr. Phil says about things in your life. So our consciousness, we know, has brought about the forms. So what we've attracted into our lives, because who we are is what we attract. And how we are is how it happens for us. We're seeing always the filter of the universe through our own personal universe. It's our own little reality. And it's all made up of all that stuff that happened like in the song that we haven't learned yet to be grateful for or to be thankful about or to acknowledge the blessings, you know, as I call it, the bless in the mess, and to be grateful for it and to bless the mess. So it's finding the lesson in the mess and blessing the mess is what will release us from this bondage of self, this bondage of the past, this bondage of what was going on, who we was consciousness, rather than the I am consciousness. So don't even notice I'm lying is a new thing you might think about to ask yourself the questions later on about, am I in my story? Am I not in my story? Am I lying to myself? Am I lying to others? But resistance is what we set up whenever we're judging, whenever we make things wrong, as Debbie Ford is saying, whenever we make people, places, things, others, the universe, God, myself, you know, we throw it all in the barrel there together and make it wrong. And I submit to you that we're either judging or we're justifying when we're in a path of resistance. And when we're in that path of resistance, nothing can move, nothing can change. Because our resistance, we're pushing so hard against whatever it is, trying to hold it back or trying to hold it in, whichever way you look at it, that we're not able to move. You cannot push against something, and if it's resisting you, move. You are S-T-U-C-K. You're stuck. You can't move beyond that. So resistance is what holds us in the place and is also a level of distraction that goes along with the denial. The distraction and the denial about what is my consciousness really that has brought these things around in my life, as Dr. Phil would say, how is that working for you? You know, do you like what's showing up? If everybody in here is in love with every aspect of what's shown up in their lives today, you may leave now. But I want to talk to you a little bit about, you know, Debbie Ford has many, many practical things in her books and workshops, and we do those kinds of things here as well. But part of the shortcut to getting to the I am consciousness, I think the secret is partly what I want to reveal to you today that's in Joel Goldsmith's work. Anyone not know who Joel Goldsmith is? Okay. We need more new people. This book by Joel Goldsmith is Conscious Union with God. And in here, I believe he has the recipe for what I want to attribute to how we get fast-tracked out of the I was consciousness into the I am consciousness, and that I am being the God that Doug read to us about. And I'm going to call that re-identification and reinterpretation, but I want to read to you what Joel Goldsmith has to say here. He says, never forget that this life of yours is God. And if it appears to you to be young or old or sick or well or evil or good, this is just God appearing to you, but is incorrectly interpreted by you. And you are the one who must reinterpret the scene. Heaven and earth are not two different places. Heaven and earth are one and the same. Earth just happens to be our mortal concept of heaven, and heaven is our real awareness of the earth. In other words, heaven is the earth correctly understood. And this fits very closely with Eastern philosophy as well, that the Hindus would teach us that our problem is just our misapprehension of things, that we've misunderstood what we thought we were seeing through the senses. And he says, now follow this carefully. There are two important points. What he calls right identification, which I'm reclassifying as re-identification, which means God appearing as the individual life, the one appearing as many, or God, life, appearing as individual being, which Doug read to us about today also in his reading. And reinterpretation, which means, excuse me, looking at things and translating that appearance through the realization that inasmuch as God is all and all is God, this is just a part of the allness of God, which is being misseen or misconstrued, coming as a false suggestion, which I must then turn around and reinterpret. He says that when the human eye sees is the misconception of the divine idea. And it makes no difference what name or term you use for this misconception, only that we must be sure that we're not trying to be so absolute that we are unwilling to reinterpret what it is that is appearing in the human scene. He says there's one suggestion here, which is that our problems all arise from the suggestion that selfhood is apart from Godhood. And this is what you are called upon to reinterpret. So when you see people and events, you must translate or reinterpret them. The very moment a person, place, or condition presents itself to you, immediately should come the realization, I know you, you are God appearing. And then reinterpret it by remembering that this is maybe a false sense of God appearing. It's a suggestion, it's an illusion. And thereby, you will not be learning to fight or battle. You will not be resisting what it is you think you see. And gradually, you'll come into oneness with this reality, that reality being the consciousness of the I am. So reinterpret and re-identify. The re-identifying part has to do with I am. I have a spiritual identity that in moments of my day I forget. Don't think it's old age or anything like that. It's just, we're all forgetful about who we are. And he says in the very beginning there, never forget that your life is God. And I would add to that, and is God's. Or in my shorter version, never forget who you are and whose you are. That we are a part of this great Godness and belong to that. I don't belong to this earth. I don't belong to this 3D existence. I don't belong to the forms that appear to be me. They might belong to me temporarily, but even at that, nothing really is mine. No thing. Because my life is timeless, birthless, deathless, ageless, because my life is God. So when I lose myself in that moment of judgment, justifying, resistance, these things that I've talked about so far, it's because I, for the moment, have spiritual amnesia. I've lost my spiritual identity. I have forgotten temporarily that the permanent part of me is God. That no matter what's going on, it's all God appearing. If it's something in myself, those things that we raised our hands for that we spent 1,000 hours trying to change, it's all God appearing. Whether it was in the one that I have perceived to be the other, who is still actually me, the I am, that is the individual and the collective that Doug read to us about in the reading, or a thing has happened or an event has happened that it seems to me, well, that's wrong or that's unjust or that's unhappy or upsetting. Is any of that actually existing in this heaven on earth that God would have? Is there unhappiness? Is there upset? Is there injustice in this world that is the God world? Don't think so. These are all the human aspects of it. Now, we've been taught, well, we have this spiritual experience, this human experience, and I'm a human being having a spiritual experience, or am I a spiritual being having a human experience? Well, those are the flip-flops that I'm going back and forth through every day. And what I want to hold to is that re-identification of myself as the Godlet, as Tina would call us, the Godlet that I am this piece of God, and God is in me, as me, through me, operating. Am I giving God a good time, as Reverend Sandy would say? Am I holding myself to the highest level of spiritual transformation that I want to set the example for? And if not, choose again. You know, it's re-identify. And then I have to reinterpret. Now that I have put on my higher spiritual identity, I'm better able to reinterpret what I was previously misconstruing, misunderstanding, misjudging as being unhappy, evil, nasty, whatever, wrong, just made it wrong somehow. I have to reinterpret that, to say, that's just God appearing. That's just God appearing to me. Now, how can I turn that around, and how can I reinterpret that where the spirit behind it is what I'm seeing? Not the evidence that I'm gathering through my senses that are the basic, physical senses. I need to get it, the God sense. I need to sniff out God in there. I need to see God in there. I need to hear God in there. Those are the senses that I want to employ, the God senses, to reinterpret what's going on. Debbie Ford says that one of the things that she discovered after uncovering her story, her dark side, her shadow, the things that were pushing her buttons, because when you know about shadow work and you're accepting of the concept of shadow work, you recognize that that's that subconscious part of you that's setting up all the formation up here, and that's pretty much dominating how you make the choices in your life. And she says that you can take that story once you've unraveled it and once you've learned what the gifts were from it, like in the song that Miranda sang, once you get thankful about it and you understand, as the Hindus would say, that it's all prasad, it's all gift, that you're able to reinterpret it. And she said that what happened was she found that one of the greatest blessings that she had gotten from the whole process was her skill development in reinterpreting life's experiences. So she said, I had what I could find the gift of the blessing in any negative experience. And my pain had taught me to become a master at reinterpreting my life's experiences and then using them to transform my current reality. So this is what I'm inviting you to consider doing, to transform your current reality so that your I am isn't so based on your I was from the past, right? What I want to do, and I'll just open this up for you. I'm always up here just talking about me. If it helps for anybody else, great. But I want to embrace and reconcile both the vastness of my divinity and the sort of littleness of my humanity. They have got to go hand in hand. They've got to find a place in me where it can be reconciled and I can embrace it all. I need to have the inner attunement that comes from connecting to spirit. Maybe some of us spend as much as an hour a day on that inward journey. Then we step out into the 23 hours of outward journey and wonder how we got out of balance. But I also have to experience what I call inner atonement. This is how I can help to transform my consciousness, is to sit down and take a look at the warts, see the things that I feel like I don't want to see, what I've been in denial about, that you didn't notice I was lying about. Yeah, right. We typically are able to see through people and understand when they're in denial, but we have a hard time seeing in ourselves, for sure. But I always tell myself, if I see it in the other, maybe it's me, 'tis I. That's part of my I am, too. Where we can let go of these things that were the pain and transform them into something that was the lesson. Find the bless in the mess and embrace it all, as Debbie talks about in her book, embracing your whole story and stop telling it. I think somebody came up to me after the last time I talked and they said, I really like that thing you said about only tell your story 3 times and that's it. She said, I'm going to stop telling my story. So I need to take that lesson back for myself. That inner attunement and inner atonement is about forgiving myself. Is about forgiving myself, forgiving others, forgiving all of it, so that it can give to me the blessing, so that I'm able to receive that blessing that it gives, instead of, no, I don't want that one. I'll give this up to you, God, but let me keep this one. You know, it's all about all of it. And I think part of what happens for me, and I'll share this with you, is that I have this problem of thinking that I am the all, you know, that it all has to be about me and I have to do it all. And sometimes, you know, God's the last thing I think about or call upon when I'm in a challenge of any character. And I read in Joel Goldsmith's book this analogy that I think is good. It has to do with the limitlessness of spirit. And when we think that we are all that we are, or that the situation that we're observing is all that we see. He's talking about how when you think that all you see and all you observe is all there is. And he gives the analogy of Niagara Falls and Lake Erie. He says, if you just think you're Niagara Falls, and you don't realize that you have this connection to source, which is called Lake Erie, that is continually pouring out and flowing, as Doug read in the reading today, that is continuously pouring out and flowing through us, that spirit that we call God, or that essence, that energy, whatever name you want to put on it, the universe, whatever you want to call it. It's a continuous and ongoing flow, and will continue to resupplement that falls, so that Niagara Falls is never going to run out of water. At least, hopefully, you know, until they have all these catastrophes they're talking about someday on the planet. But that there is no separation. There is no separation from us and spirit, just as there's no separation from Niagara Falls and Lake Erie. You don't go to Niagara Falls and say, oh yeah, I see, that's where the falls stop, and this is where the lake begins. You would not be able to discern that. And there's no discernible point where we stop and God starts, or God stops and we start. None of that works. It's all this limitless connectedness of us as spirit, with spirit, by spirit, through, around, and for us. This is how it works. So I want to close by asking you a couple of questions that you might take with you to ask yourself during your week. One is my story using me, or am I using it? Am I able to transform the parts of my story into the blessings? Am I able to get the lessons? Or am I just allowing myself to be at the affect of whatever it is that is in my consciousness that I may not even be aware of, but it's causing stuff to show up that I might not be that thrilled with? So where do we piece this out? Your mess is your message. So please, let's stop denying the messes that have been parts of our lives and that have made us who we are today, the who I am today in Miranda's song. And in the moment when you're having trouble reinterpreting the situation after you've re-identified with your spiritual identity, ask yourself if you're still stuck in justifying or judgment. Am I justifying something about why I'm this way or that way? Or am I judging this other thing, person, place, about what it is that they are? Either way, I'm stuck. I'm in resistance and I'm stuck. So those are a couple questions that I'd invite you to take home. And for any of those of you who may not be familiar with it, please take a look on the internet at Byron Katie's The Work. She has some great questions that are a part of the work that are always helpful to me, and I think would be helpful to you too, about, you know, is it true? How do I know it's true? Can I be absolutely positive that it's true? These are the things that I try to remember to ask myself when I see myself in that judging, justifying mode. So in closing, I want to read you something more from Joel Goldsmith and share an affirmation with you from Debbie. This is The Infinite Way by Joel Goldsmith, the quintessential classic for practitioners of New Thought and metaphysics and in terms of healing and that type of thing. And here's what Joel Goldsmith has to say about that first glimpse of heaven, that heaven that's here on earth, once we finally understand it, based on what he talked about in the other book, where we are misconstruing or misunderstanding heaven on earth. The first glimpse into the heaven of here and now is the beginning of the ascension for us, which is understood now as rising above conditions and experiences of the world. And we behold then the many mansions prepared for us in spiritual consciousness, in the awareness of reality. And we're no longer bound by the evidence of our physical senses, not limited to the visible supply, not circumscribed by visible bonds or bounds, and we're not tied by visible concepts of time or space. Our good is flowing from the infinite, invisible realm of spirit, soul, to our immediate apprehension. And let's not judge of our good by the senses by the evidence of senses. Out of the tremendous resources of our soul comes instant awareness of all that we can utilize for our abundant living. No good thing is withheld from us as we look above the physical evidence into the great invisible. Look up, look up. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. And I'll share with you this affirmation that maybe you say with me. I'll read it to you first and then we'll go through it again. I am holy. I am divine. I am worthy of everything the universe has to offer. I am holy. I am divine. I am worthy of everything the universe has to offer. Namaste.